All right. First, I want to thank you all for coming, of course, for tonight. Today's topic will be revealing the face of God. It is quite big and yet a simple topic. It's something relatively short notice to me kind of to get to this topic, because I think everyone kind of has busy days, or when it comes to reflection, many things come to mind, but this is something that goes into the basic, because we are very visual beings. We really try to visualize, not just in a perceptive way to see how the world functions in terms of scientific, but also through symbolism to know what does that mean, really. What is God and how does he look like? And I'll start off with a little short story that I kind of that came to my mind again, kind of thinking of a topic. And I try to be as quick as possible so that you also have enough time to discuss, and also leave enough space so that I won't take away content for you to discuss. But many years ago, when I was about maybe 10, one of my first intellectual questions was, how does God look like? Because every time we prayed on the table and we had food in front of us, and we would close our eyes and kind of pray to this God, I always thought, how should I visualize God? How can I really connect to him? I don't know how he looks like. I don't know if what does he particularly represent in a visual sense. And I remember I went, of course, like almost every good son would do, I went to ask my parents, and particularly I asked my mother. And I asked her, how does God look like? And she told me, she gave me quite an interesting answer. And that was, look into your neighbor's face and you will see the face of God. And of course, as a young kid, it's kind of like, what the hell does that mean? I thought, we had a couple right next to us in the flat. And I thought, maybe I should just ring on their doorbell, they open up, and then I can kind of see their face and kind of see, okay, that's how they look like. It's it's them. It's like, not particular. It goes into some way of this direction. But it is in the end a legitimate question, because all the time we read it in scripture, or when we do conditions, or have deep talks, it always comes like, we are made by the image of God. That's Genesis. That is, God made Adam and Eve based on his image. That's who they are. The masculine aspect and feminine aspect in unificationist terminology, or sentences like, we resemble God, we shall manifest God. So it means not just that we look like him, but we shall become like him. We shall become God-like. And there is a very special story that also came into my mind, reading or kind of reflecting about this question, was the story of the Samaritan in the Bible, where this fella, you see it on the picture, kind of got beat up by thugs and thieves. And he laid there in the desert, and a priest came by, and a vassal, I think, people of high status in society, and yet they just went to the other side of the street. They looked at him quickly and they ignored him. And then the Samaritan, a man from an opposing tribe, came to his rescue and saved this man, despite being in enemy kind of territory, and maybe being, overall you can take it like from a different folk, from a different tribe, a different race, whatever you may call it. Yet he came to this man who needed help. And this is maybe stuff like living for the sake of others comes to mind. But that story shows that this Samaritan, even though as an enemy, there is still God in him. That is maybe something how God looks like. So we can maybe associate him to an act, to an action, despite being somebody you would never expect. And I gathered here, I don't know if you can see all of it, I gathered here some images on the internet, of course, different representations on how humanity and different cultures try to visualize God, this ultimate divine being. And of course, one thing that always comes to mind is like the Greek mythology, like all these different gods that have different personalities and different characters. And the Greeks, they associated emotion with divinity because it was part of human nature and it was eternal for us, where this anger like was represented in the god Ares, the god of war, or maybe Aphrodite was the goddess of beauty, I think, and nature in some way, or Gaia particularly. And then we have other images like down on the right, you see Moses writing the laws into the Testament or Old Testament as we know. Maybe God isn't something to see really. Maybe God is a set of laws, man-made laws, divine laws, whatever it may be. I'll leave it open. Others associate God with nature. That's why I put also that beautiful painting there. That nature has this chaotic, this creation, this creative aspect to existence. Of course, then we have a very classic and old-fashioned view on God on top of the left. God the Father, I think it is called, where God is represented as an old wise man. But maybe it's not such a bad idea because, as we know, we are made by God's image. So it is an honor actually to kind of be able to relate to the absolute highest being, with a human face that looks similar to us. And maybe what I've heard also was that God is maybe a cloud, a gas material, somehow, something like this, transcending us. It flows through us, is within us, or has some form of spiritual matter to it. But of course, I'm kind of taking many ideas into account and kind of putting it as open as possible so you can kind of get an idea of, how our ancestors from all corners of the world really contended with that simple question a dumb 10-year-old asked their mother. It is actually a very deep and important question. How can we relate to that being, especially visually? And that is where you come into that topic, because I think I talked a little bit enough already. So now we'll get into one-on-one discussions. Also, this picture is not random. This is also from the movie Kung Fu Panda. It's the moment where Po, finds out his divinity by realizing realizing that faith is the secret ingredient. I'll leave it up to you. I won't spoil you the movie if you haven't seen it. But it is a deep realization that maybe it's not just something external, how God looks like. You can be God in some way, whatever your opinion or perspective may be. But yes, Alex, you can put the questions into the Zoom. That's the first part. You can either see it in the chat